Seattle rain isn't loud. It doesn't come crashing down like in the movies. It lingers, soft, persistent, like a quiet memory that won't leave you alone. That morning, Rachel Johnson sat by the window with both hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. Outside, the city moved on. Buses screeched at corners, someone shouted from across the street, and bicycles zipped past puddles. But inside her tiny apartment, the world had narrowed down to one thing: waiting. She waited for the little footsteps. Then, like every morning, they came, padding softly across the hallway. A voice followed, small and sleepy. "Good morning, Mama." Rachel turned. There she was, Sophia, 5 years old, barefoot, her favorite stuffed bunny trailing behind her like a tired companion. Rachel smiled, her heart pulling tighter than she liked to admit. "Good morning, Princess," she said warmly, standing to scoop her daughter into a hug. Sophia smelled like cotton sheets and dreams. She rested her head against her mother's shoulder with the kind of trust only a child could offer. 2 years had passed since the divorce. 2 years of learning how to cook just for two. 2 years of bedtime stories with no one to switch turns. 2 years of wondering if her daughter would ever remember what a complete family felt like. But somehow, this life they built was enough. Simple, steady, safe. As Sophia shuffled to the table and began coloring, Rachel reached for her phone. Just habit, really. No missed calls except one. Her heart skipped. Mom. It had been weeks since they spoke. Maybe months, if she was honest. The calls had become less frequent. She always had a reason. Meetings, daycare, exhaustion. She hesitated, then tapped call back. The phone rang twice. "Rachel?" Her mother's voice was exactly the same, like time hadn't touched it. "Hi, Mom," she exhaled, suddenly aware of how much she'd missed that voice. "Oh, Rachel, the roses are blooming like you wouldn't believe," Helen said with a laugh. "You should see the red ones. Huge. They remind me of when you were little." Rachel leaned against the kitchen counter, eyes closing for a moment. "You and your roses," she whispered. "Well, they're still here, like always." Rachel let the silence fill the line for a beat, too long. She imagined her mother out there in the garden, the same one her father once cared for, her hands in the soil, the scent of earth and petals in the air. But something tugged at her chest, a whisper of guilt, a flicker of unease, because no matter how warm Helen's voice sounded, there was a distance in it, something just beneath the surface, a hollowness she couldn't quite place, and yet Rachel said nothing. She never asked, "Are you lonely?" She only said, "I'm glad the roses are doing well." And Helen replied, "They miss you." Rachel didn't know then, but that was the first warning. Later that afternoon, Rachel walked into the living room with a warm cup of tea in one hand and a pile of laundry in the other. Sophia was on the floor, lying on her belly, completely immersed in a sea of crayons and construction paper. "Whatcha drawing, sweetheart?" Rachel asked, dropping the laundry basket and sitting beside her. Sophia didn't look up. "I'm drawing Grandma." Rachel blinked. She leaned in, eyes falling on the sketch, a simple woman in a floral dress with white hair and a big smile. But something was off. There were no eyes, just empty circles. Rachel swallowed. "You forgot her eyes, baby." Sophia looked up, confused. "I don't remember what Grandma's face looks like, only her voice." Rachel froze. The tea in her hand turned lukewarm. A slow realization crept into her chest like fog. Her daughter had never really seen her grandmother. 3 years. 3 whole years since they last visited. Sophia had been just 2. At that age, memories fade like sidewalk chalk in the rain. Rachel had kept postponing trips home, always for practical reasons. Work, timing, budget, weather, always something. But now, it felt like an excuse. "Mama," Sophia's voice pulled her back. "Is Grandma nice?" Rachel forced a smile, though her throat was tight. "Yes, baby. She's very kind. She loves you so much." Sophia nodded. "I want to see her soon. Can we go?" Rachel stared at her daughter, at the innocence in her eyes, and then at the picture with no eyes drawn. Her heart ached. She picked up her phone again, scrolling through the texts. No new messages from her sister, no updates, just the usual brief, emotionless lines about their mother doing well. She went back to the call history. The last conversation with her mom echoed in her mind. So clear, so normal, so lifeless. It was something she hadn't noticed in the moment, but now, in hindsight, it chilled her. The way her mother talked about the roses, always the roses, as if she were clinging to one safe detail, as if she didn't remember much else. Rachel stood up, walked to the calendar, and drew a red circle around the next weekend. She didn't need more signs. She had ignored the whispers of doubt long enough. It was time. She and Sophia were going home. The airport buzzed with life. Announcements crackled over the speakers, luggage wheels zipped across the polished floor, and people moved in hurried streams past security checkpoints. But for Rachel and Sophia, the world had slowed to a different rhythm. This wasn't just a trip, it was a return. As they boarded the plane, Sophia clutched her stuffed bunny tighter than usual. "Mama," she whispered, "does the airplane fly above the clouds?" Rachel smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, so high that the clouds look like cotton." Once in the air, Sophia's face lit up at the window view. Her small fingers tapped the glass, marveling at how tiny the world looked from above. Rachel watched her daughter and thought of her mother. She imagined her mother sitting by the garden, hands buried in soil, whispering to the roses like they were old friends. She imagined what her face would look like, older, yes, but still full of that stubborn warmth only Helen carried. The plane began its descent into the small Midwestern town where Rachel had grown up. Unlike Seattle's sprawling terminals, this airport felt like a memory frozen in time. Wooden benches, familiar coffee smells, a quiet breeze from the open glass doors. They picked up their rental car, an old white sedan, and headed toward Maple Street. The moment they left the airport, the air changed. It wasn't just the smell of farmland or wildflowers. It was something deeper, like breathing in memory itself. Rachel rolled the window down slightly and let it hit her face. Sophia in the back seat hummed to herself. "Mama, is this the town where you were born?" Rachel nodded, voice caught in her throat. "Yes, baby. Every corner here tells a story." They passed by a gas station that used to be a candy shop. A dusty bookstore, now replaced by a cafe. But other things hadn't changed. There was the elementary school, its faded red bricks still stubbornly standing. And there was the old ice cream shack, still painted pale blue. Rachel could almost see herself there, 10 years old, running barefoot with Ashley under the summer sun, holding vanilla cones and laughing about nothing. Further down the road, they passed the narrow dirt path behind the library, the one that used to be a shortcut home. It was still there, overgrown but familiar. Rachel slowed the car as they turned onto Maple Street. Her chest tightened. This was it. Home was just around the corner. Rachel turned the corner onto Maple Street, heart pounding in her chest. "There it is, baby," she whispered. "Grandma's house." Sophia pressed her nose to the window. "Wow, it's so pretty, Mama. Look at all the flowers." The house looked perfect. White walls, blue roof, and the garden. Ugh, the garden. Red, pink, and white roses bloomed in full dancing in the afternoon breeze. It was just as her mother had described, just as Rachel remembered. She parked the car and stepped out slowly, taking a deep breath. The air smelled like lilacs, fresh grass, and childhood. Sophia slipped her hand into Rachel's. "I'm nervous, Mama." "It's okay," Rachel whispered, squeezing her hand. "Grandma's gonna love you." Rachel reached toward the doorbell, heart fluttering with anticipation. But before she could press it, a door creaked open next door. "Rachel," she turned. There, standing at the edge of the garden in a floral dress, was Mrs. Brown, the elderly neighbor who had lived next to them for decades. She looked exactly the same. Silver curls, kind smile, warm eyes. Rachel lit up. "Mrs. Brown, oh my gosh, it's been forever." Mrs. Brown hurried over, arms open. 3 years, dear. Too long." They hugged. "This is my daughter Sophia," Rachel said proudly. "Oh my, she's precious," Mrs. Brown beamed, "just like her grandma said." Sophia smiled shyly. Rachel gestured toward the house. "We're here to visit Mom. Sophia's never seen her in person. It's been too long." Mrs. Brown's smile faded. She hesitated. "Rachel," her voice dropped. "Honey, no one's lived in that house for over a year." Rachel blinked. "What?" Mrs. Brown looked directly at her, eyes full of concern. "Your mother. She hasn't been here, not since last spring." "That's not..." Rachel shook her head. "I just talked to her yesterday. She said the roses were blooming." Mrs. Brown looked at the garden, then back at Rachel. "They are, but that's because a service company takes care of them now, paid monthly. Same with the lights. I see them come every week." Rachel's heart skipped. "That can't be right." "I'm sorry, dear. I assumed you knew." Rachel staggered back a step. Her hand trembled. The roses, the house, the voice. None of it made sense anymore. Sophia looked up at her mother, worried. "Mama." Rachel couldn't speak. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She reached for her phone, numb fingers scrolling to her last call. "Mom? Yesterday, 7 minutes." She hit redial. "Ring? Ring? Hello?" It was her mother's voice, clear, familiar. "Rachel?" Rachel's knees almost gave out. She stared at the house, then at Mrs. Brown. Then whispered, more to herself than anyone else, "If no one lives here, then where is my mother?" Rachel stood frozen on the front lawn, phone still in hand. Sophia's tiny fingers curled around hers, her eyes wide with confusion. From the side of the house came the sound of hurried footsteps on gravel. Rachel turned. A woman emerged, dressed in a navy blue pantsuit, her shoulder-length brown hair slightly disheveled, her face flushed as if she had been running or hiding. It took Rachel a moment to recognize her. "Ashley, her younger sister. Ashley," Rachel called out, her voice cracking. Ashley stopped in her tracks, her expression stunned, like someone caught sneaking out of a lie. "Rachel," she breathed, her voice uneven. What are you doing here?" Rachel narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean, what am I doing here? I came to see Mom." Ashley blinked rapidly, her mouth opening but no words coming out. Rachel stepped forward. "I called you yesterday. I said I was coming." I know, but Rachel, listen, it's complicated." That word, complicated. It dropped like a rock into the pit of Rachel's stomach. Ashley looked different, older somehow, tired. Her eyes darted toward Sophia, then back at the house, then finally settled on Rachel's face. Rachel's voice hardened. "Where's Mom?" Ashley hesitated. "She's okay." "That's not what I asked." Sophia tugged on her mother's hand. "Mama, who's that?" Rachel glanced down. "That's Aunt Ashley, baby." Ashley gave a weak wave, then looked away. Rachel's heartbeat was racing now. "I just spoke to Mom yesterday, Ashley. She said she was here. She talked about the roses. She sounded fine." Ashley looked like she was about to cry. "I know," she whispered, "but Rachel, things aren't what they seem." Rachel's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Start talking." Rachel stood stiff as stone. Every nerve in her body screamed. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. Ashley looked down, wringing her hands like a child caught in a lie. She's at Sunnydale Care," Ashley finally said, voice barely audible. Rachel froze. "What?" "It's a nursing facility," Ashley clarified, eyes still avoiding her sister's. "Mom, she's been there for over a year." The words felt like glass shattering inside Rachel's chest. "A year?" Her voice cracked. "You're telling me she hasn't been living here for a year?" Ashley nodded, slowly ashamed. "And you didn't think I deserved to know?" It wasn't like that. Don't, Rachel snapped. Sophia looked up, sensing the tension. Rachel knelt down beside her. Sweetheart, can you play in Mrs. Brown's garden her a little bit? Mrs. Brown, who'd been watching silently from the side, gently reached for Sophia's hand. Come, darling, let's go look at the flowers. Once they were gone, Rachel stood and faced her sister fully. Tell me the truth, she said, her voice low but fierce. What happened? Ashley looked like she might collapse. Mom's memory started fading. Little things at first. Forgetting names, misplacing things. Then, she left the stove on one night. Wandered outside barefoot. I had to do something. Rachel swallowed hard. So you put her in a home? I didn't have a choice. You had a choice, Ashley. You could have called me. Ashley avoided her gaze. You were busy, in Seattle, working. I didn't want to worry you. Rachel's hands curled into fists. You didn't want to worry me? You let me talk to her on the phone. You let Sophia believe she still lived here. Ashley hesitated. That wasn't really her on the phone. Rachel's blood ran cold. What do you mean? I recorded her voice months ago, when she could still hold a conversation. I just played it back, used it to respond. Short calls. You never noticed. Rachel's knees almost gave out. You mean I haven't actually spoken to Mom in over a year? Ashley said nothing. Rachel backed away like she'd been punched. The air felt thin. Her heart pounded so loud it hurt. All those calls, the laughter, the stories about roses. It had all been a lie wrapped in her mother's voice. Tears stung her eyes. She looked at Ashley, but now she wasn't just hurt, she was angry, deadly calm. You're hiding something, Rachel said quietly. Something more. Ashley flinched. Rachel stepped forward, her voice cold and sharp. You took Mom's money, didn't you? Ashley froze. For a moment, her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Rachel didn't blink. Her stare was sharp, cold, drilling through whatever guilt Ashley still had left. Finally, Ashley whispered, I have power of attorney. The words dropped like a bomb between them. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Since when? Ashley hesitated. Since before Mom's condition got worse. I got her to sign when she was still lucid. Rachel crossed her arms. Lucid. What exactly does lucid mean, Ashley? She was already forgetting names, wasn't she? Ashley's voice wavered. She understood enough. She trusted me. No, Rachel said flatly. She didn't understand what she was signing, did she? Ashley looked away. That silence was an answer. Rachel took a step closer, her voice barely above a whisper, but every word cut like a blade. You gave her a pen when she was already slipping, didn't you? Ashley didn't respond. You sat her down, smiled, and said, just sign this, Mom, it's nothing. I didn't. You did. I didn't force her, but you didn't explain it either. Ashley shook her head, but her hands were trembling. Rachel stepped even closer. You used that paper, that signature, to take control of her life. Her money, her house. You didn't earn that power. You took it. It wasn't like that, Ashley's voice cracked. Rachel stared at her. Ashley, that's not power of attorney. That's manipulation. Rachel couldn't believe what she was hearing. You were going to sell the house? Ashley shifted her weight. Her voice was tight, defensive. Yes, I was thinking about it. Rachel's jaw dropped. Thinking about selling Mom and Dad's house? Ashley's eyes flared. You don't get it, Rachel. I'm drowning here. 2 kids, a mortgage bills piling up, and you living in Seattle with a tech job, your fancy apartment. Don't, Rachel cut her off. Don't make this about me. Ashley's voice rose. But it is about you. You left. You moved on. You had a choice. I stayed behind to deal with all of it. Deal with it, Rachel's voice cracked. You locked Mom away and started carving up her life like it was a checklist. She needed care. She needed family. Ashley's hands trembled. You don't know how hard it's been, because you never told me, Rachel shouted. For a moment, everything fell silent. Even the wind stilled. Rachel took a shaky breath and turned away, walking toward the garden. The roses were in full bloom, just like her mother said. Red, pink, white, perfect. But it wasn't beauty she saw, it was betrayal. She reached out and touched one of the blossoms. Soft, delicate, alive. But in her heart, something had died. She stood there between the petals her father once planted, facing the truth. Her sister had erased her. Her mother had been hidden from her. And the house she grew up in was nothing more than a line item on someone else's financial plan. Rachel sank to her knees in the middle of the garden. Her shoulders shook, and for the first time in years, she cried. The automatic doors of Sunnydale Care slid open with a quiet hiss. Rachel stepped inside, holding Sophia's hand tightly. The air smelled of disinfectant and something faintly floral, lavender maybe. Everything was calm, too calm. This wasn't home. It wasn't the smell of cinnamon rolls in the oven. It wasn't laughter echoing in the hallway. But her mother was here, and that was all that mattered now. The receptionist looked up and smiled kindly. You're here for Helen Johnson? Rachel nodded. She's in a private room on the second floor. She's having a good day today. A good day. Those words hit Rachel like a wave. What did a bad day look like? She didn't ask. They walked slowly down the corridor, Sophia's footsteps quiet against the tile. Her daughter clung to her arm, wide-eyed, unsure of what to expect. Rachel stopped outside the room, took a deep breath, then knocked. Come in, a soft voice answered. Rachel pushed the door open, and there by the window, sunlight falling gently across her face, was Helen. Thinner, her white hair tied in a neat bun. Skin paler than Rachel remembered. But those eyes, those gentle, tired, loving eyes, they lit up instantly. Rachel, Helen whispered. Rachel's heart cracked wide open. Hi, Mom. Helen stood up slowly but steadily. Is it really you? Her voice trembled. You came? Rachel rushed forward and wrapped her arms around her mother. I'm here. I'm really here. Helen held her close, her hands still strong despite the years. I waited so long. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. I didn't know. I didn't know everything. Then she turned and gently brought Sophia forward. This is your granddaughter. Helen's eyes widened in awe. My goodness! She dropped to one knee with surprising grace, arms open. Sophia hesitated for a moment, then ran forward. Helen embraced her. You're even more beautiful than in the photos. Sophia smiled shyly. Grandma, I made you a drawing. Helen held the folded paper like it was treasure. You did? It's a rose. Helen's lips quivered. Grandpa would have loved that. And for the first time in over a year, Helen wasn't alone anymore. It didn't take Rachel long to decide. That same night, after tucking Sophia into bed at the hotel, she sat alone by the window and stared at the lights of the small town. Seattle felt so far away, so distant, as if it belonged to a different version of her. This was where she needed to be now, near her mother, near something real. She picked up her phone, called her company, and asked about switching to remote work permanently. They agreed. Within 2 weeks, Helen Johnson had a new room in a senior care center, just 15 minutes from Rachel's apartment in Seattle. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm. It smelled like chamomile and always had music playing in the background. Rachel visited almost every day, but Sophia, she came every night, and with her came stories, fairy tales, princess adventures, silly poems, animal books. Each evening, Rachel watched her daughter curl up on the bed next to Helen, carefully sounding out each word. And Helen, her eyes often cloudy with confusion, would smile and follow along as if the rhythm of her granddaughter's voice somehow brought clarity. Once upon a time. Tell me again, sweetie. Again, Grandma. The moments were small, quiet, gentle, but they were everything. Rachel began bringing in flowers from the garden, fresh-cut roses, lavender, daisies. Every time she placed them in a vase, Helen would lean in and inhale deeply. Sometimes she remembered, sometimes she didn't. But what mattered was the feeling. One night, as Sophia dozed off beside her grandmother, Rachel sat at the foot of the bed and whispered to herself, "Love is stronger than memory." And in that moment, she believed it. Rachel had been patient, but she had not been idle. In the weeks following her mother's transfer to the care center, Rachel began collecting everything: printed bank statements, copies of legal filings, voice recordings from the fake calls Ashley had made, even digital receipts of suspicious transfers. She laid them all out on her kitchen counter, sorting them with the same precision she once applied to product launches and quarterly reports. But this wasn't business. This was war, fought with facts. She took the evidence to a family attorney, a woman in her 50s with steely eyes and a voice like marble. After 2 hours, the attorney looked up and said 4 words Rachel would never forget: "We have a case." Rachel filed the complaint the next morning. Within days, the investigation began. It didn't take long. Ashley had left a paper trail, sloppy, emotional, and arrogant. She had forged Helen's signature on property documents, drained tens of thousands from her savings, and even used her mother's name to secure a high-interest loan that was already delinquent. Most damning of all, the voice recordings. Identical phrases, same pauses, the same cough between sentences. Ashley had built a fantasy out of cut-and-paste audio, fooling her sister with her own mother's voice. But the truth had a sound too. And it was loud now. Ashley was formally charged with financial exploitation of an elder, identity fraud, document forgery, and obstruction of legal rights. Rachel stood outside the courthouse the day her sister was arraigned. The media hadn't caught on yet. No cameras, just clouds and a cold wind. But she felt the moment settle deep into her bones. This is for Mom. Ashley's trial didn't last long. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged documents, the manipulated bank records, the voice clips that no longer sounded like love, just control. And when she finally stood in court, the mask cracked. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," Ashley whispered, eyes red, voice thin. "I just didn't know how to ask for help." But the judge didn't speak in sympathy. The verdict? 3 years in prison. That was just the beginning. Her employer terminated her the same week. Her husband filed for divorce. She lost custody of her 2 sons, both of whom were too young to understand fully, but old enough to feel that something had been broken. In the visiting room of the county jail, Ashley sat across from her sister one final time before being transferred to a correctional facility. She didn't cry, she didn't beg, she just looked at Rachel and said, "I just wanted to take the weight off my shoulders, but in the end, I lost everything." There were no dramatic exits, no final screams, only silence and the sound of consequences settling in. Because here's the thing, you can be exhausted, you can be desperate, but you don't get to betray the people who love you and expect no price. The end didn't come suddenly. It came like a soft whisper. Helen's memory had its good days and bad, but she always remembered Rachel's face and Sophia's voice reading bedtime stories. The 3 of them spent quiet afternoons watching the rose garden from the window. Some days Helen would hum old lullabies under her breath. Other days she would hold Rachel's hand and whisper, "I'm proud of the woman you've become." One morning, just before spring broke through the Seattle rain, Rachel walked into her mother's room and knew. Helen was smiling in her sleep, eyes closed, hands folded. Sophia stood beside the bed, holding a storybook she never got to finish. Rachel sat down, her heart heavy but full. She pressed a kiss to her mother's forehead and whispered, "You waited for us." And now you can rest. The funeral was small, intimate, no grand speeches, just soft tears, held hands, and wind blowing through the roses outside the chapel. Rachel chose the words for the gravestone herself. True love is eternal, because even when memory fades, even when voices break, love remains. Rachel didn't sell the house. She couldn't. Too many memories lived in those walls. The scent of cinnamon from Sunday mornings, the soft humming of her mother in the kitchen, and the rose garden her father once tended, even when his hands began to tremble. Instead, she turned the home into something purposeful. She rented it out, quiet tenants who loved roses, and used the income to cover what her mother had left behind: medical bills, hospice care, and a small scholarship fund for single mothers. She didn't need to do it, but she wanted to. And the garden, it bloomed like never before. A local garden club took it on as their pride. Volunteers came every weekend. Children learned how to prune. Seniors taught them the names of each flower. There was laughter again, life. Rachel would visit sometimes, standing by the rose bushes, Sophia's hand in hers. And when someone asked her, "Is this your family's garden?" she would smile and say, "Yes, and now it belongs to many families." Because love, when it's real, doesn't end, it grows. It was a quiet evening. Sophia had just finished watering a small pot of roses on the balcony. The sun dipped low behind the hills, casting soft gold across their living room. She turned to Rachel and asked, "Mom, what is a family really?" Rachel froze for a moment, because once she might have answered with bloodlines or last names or shared traditions. But now she knew better. She smiled through the sting in her eyes and said, "Family is the people who don't lie to you. It's where love doesn't come with conditions." Sophia nodded slowly, as if carving the words into her soul. They stood together for a while, watching the sky change colors. And Rachel whispered, not to Sophia this time, but to someone beyond the clouds, "I understand now, Mom, and I'll pass it on." Somewhere, she imagined Helen was laughing with Robert again. And this time, no one was left behind. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us hurt us the most. But healing begins the moment we choose truth over silence and love over resentment. This story reminds us family is not just who shares your blood. Family is who shows up, who tells the truth, and who never lets you face pain alone. If someone you love is growing older, don't wait for the perfect time. Call them, visit them, ask them if they're really okay. Because love is not what you say, it's what you show before it's too late. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe to Through Her Eyes for more stories that heal, that challenge, and that stay with you. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder. Love loud, love early, love well.